Are you ready to uncover your retirement solution? Learn more as Keil and his guests guide you along the path of retirement and reveal the 5 steps you need to take to solve your retirement puzzle. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Retirement Revealed with Keil. Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing well, Eric. Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning. And I will tell you this, for the audience members, I'm having a hard time containing myself here. Jeremy and I have been talking before the podcast started. He told me a story about his kids that is just fantastic. It was hilarious, and maybe someday he'll share it with the entire audience, but I'm still giggling about it. Having a hard time controlling myself. But we're on task now. We're ready to go. Jeremy, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about retirement savings plans.
Yes. Okay, retirement savings plans.
It's easier to get to retirement if you have a savings plan.
Yeah, I would say it would be a much better retirement if you've got some sort of savings plan, for sure. And I've had conversations with advisors before, and I've heard retirement savings plan as a title before, and usually I hear it referred to as a 401k and other types of investments like that. Is that kind of what this is?
Just about, yeah. There's so much confusion out there because there's so many different types of retirement savings plans. They have different tax consequences. And our hope is that you're going to know more about these savings plans. If you know more about your money, you'll feel better about your money. You'll probably make better decisions as well.
All right. Well, good deal. Yeah, because like I said, I usually think of a 401k, and for years I never thought of a 401k as a quote unquote savings plan or a retire savings plan. I always thought it was the retirement plan, especially in my younger years. I was like, well, I have a 401k. That's what it is. But I know that's absolutely wrong now from learning from you and a few others that were much smarter than I. So I'm going to let you take this over. And where do we start to kind of dissect what these?
Well, you might as well start with that 401k.
All right.
We'll start right there. And you're right on. Most people think, well, that's my retirement. Some people even call it my retirement, and they're referring to their 401k.
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk about a few different plans. They're very similar. 401k, 403b, 457. These are all plans that you get through work. So you can't just go out and do it on your own. You have to be part of a company, or in the case of a 403b, that's basically the same thing, but in a nonprofit. Or if you work for the government, any type of government entity place, you'll most likely have a 457. It's all virtually the same, just different rules for various reasons, because you got a for-profit company, a nonprofit, or the government workplace. And thankfully, those rules around them are so similar. Let's just kind of lump them all together. Go talk to your financial advisor if you've got something that's slightly different, because you might, there are some slight differences. But in general, when we're talking about these 401ks, 403bs, 457s, something you get through work, you've got the ability to add money to it yourself, and hopefully the place you're working is actually adding some of their own money in there to help you out as well.
Now, this is the first time I've ever heard of a 457, and you said that's with the government?
Yep, 457s for government entities. So mainly when I say this is actually more like your state or county might have it. Federal government has something called the TSP, Thrift Savings Plans, come from Maryland. And just about everyone I know out there either works for the federal government or is a teacher. So you can kind of lump that in the mix too. 401k, 403b, 457. It's kind of like your state and local government. TSP or Thrift Savings Plan, that's for the federal government. But they all virtually work the same, and that you get to contribute what you want. And here we are in 2020. They've got these limits. They, in a way, say we want you to put money in, but not too much. They're trying to be a little, egalitarian. Let's help out everybody, but let's not skew it so much towards the richest folks that are out there. So they have these contribution limits, and right now in 2020, the most you can put in is $19,500. That's from your paycheck, putting money in from your paycheck. You can't write a check to the 401k. It's got to come out of your salary, got to come out of your earnings every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there a way to adjust that toward the end of the year? Is it so if you've been let's say you're putting in $500 a month for the first 10 months, which is $5,000, but you've got a lot more that you could possibly put in. Can you really heavy load it at the end, or is once you set how much is coming out per month, that's it?
Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit of that maybe later on. But the plan itself, so the company or whomever puts together the rules around it, That's one of the knocks on a 401k or those similar plans is that you don't control a lot of the rules. So the company themselves might say, no, if you set it here at the open enrollment period in the fall, you're stuck for the rest of the time. You're stuck for the next year. Hopefully, you've got a plan that allows you to adjust it over time. Most plans, I think, these days do. But you still run into some of those where you're stuck on a certain percentage or certain dollar amount with every paycheck.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
What else do we have?
Well, again, and just to finish up those areas, when you've got this work plan, hopefully the place is contributing to it. And oftentimes they'll call that a matching contribution. You'll hear stuff like 100% up to the first 4% and 50% to the next 2 or 4%, something like that. It sounds confusing, but what they're saying is if you put in $1, they'll put in $1 up to a certain amount. And if you put in $1 beyond that, they'll put in half a dollar up to a certain amount. And beyond that, go ahead and put in as much as you want, but you won't be getting any more from that company. So kind of the first rules of thumbs with having these 401k type of investments is find out what your matching contribution looks like. And whatever it is that they're giving you as a match, try to max that out, right? If they're going to give you an extra 4.5% into your retirement, right? That's kind of like a 4.5% pay boost.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just, the fact that you put money in the 401k means the company's going to give you more money. It's just that they're putting it towards your future, not towards your paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah. The last company I worked with, I was much smarter. it was another 401k that I'd gotten into, but I was a little bit wiser when I started it. And the company did that. It was 3%. They matched 100% of the first 3%, 50% of the next 3%. So it was a total of 6%. Yep. So that's exactly what I started putting in the 401k was 6%, just to make sure I got that full match, because you're right. It's free money in a way. So
yeah, that's basically it. And that's what they did. That's a common one. That's called something called safe harbor. Won't get into that. If you're the employee, you can't control that at all. So it's just something your employer's got to figure out. But the mistake a lot of people make, and we hear this stuff all the time, we hear people say, oh, I'm maxing out. And when they say that, they're talking about, well, I maxed out my contribution, which is great there. They maxed out how much the employer is matching them, rather. But they can actually contribute more. And in fact, if you're over 50, you can put another $6,500 on top of that. They figure you get to 50, you're getting closer towards your retirement. Perhaps you're motivated to put more money in to save, and they'll let you go. In this case, you add the two together. That's $26,000 a year you can save towards your 401k. But again, a lot of people, you mentioned your former company, your last company there. A lot of people take that info. Okay, their match is up to 6%, and they'll just think that's how all places are. No, you got to read your plan. Every company can do something different. Yeah. So we hear people all the time, oh, I maxed it out by putting in 10%. That was your company plan 20 years ago. Things have changed. The rules have changed. Different companies have different plans. Make sure you find out what your plan's doing, and don't rely on maybe your past knowledge from a prior plan or even your own plan. They might change it every year themselves.
Exactly. And don't rely on what your spouse's plan is, because if they work at a different company, their plan could be completely different. You've got to know what your own is. But that's still exciting for folks over 50, a husband and wife that are both working. That's $26,000 each per year with obviously different plans in place. But I mean, that's not too shabby, $52,000 a year that they're able to put away. That's good.
Yeah. If you're motivated, you got the money to do it. And they call it extra amount to catch up, because they kind of figure that it's tougher when you're younger. You got the kids at home, and maybe you realize over time, I need to start putting some extra money in so you can catch up for what you had missed out on. That's why they came out on that idea.
Yeah, it's amazing how much money you don't have when you have kids.
Yeah,
Just
that's for sure. Absolutely.
All right.
Good. And so a lot of those ones we just talked about, that's in the big companies, your big companies, big nonprofits. A lot of times if you work for a smaller company, they might have something called a SEP or a simple. A SEP plan is something that the company sets up for you, and you actually can't even put any money in yourself. So that's actually maybe not too bad. What if the company's giving you 5-10% every year just for free? That's great.
Yeah.
Be thankful for it. But at the same time, you can't put any money in yourself. So you have to go out and find other places like the traditional and Roth IRAs that we'll talk about next. So this idea of a SEP IRA, you have to be the business owner to actually set that up. If you're the business owner, want to learn more, great way for you to take money and kind of cut your taxes this year by putting money into a SEP IRA. So, give your advisor a call, give us a call. We can talk about that. But let's talk about the simple IRA, because that's something where you as the employee can control a bit of it.
All right.
And with that, it's basically like that 401k. Not too much different, except that you can only put in $13,500 yourself. So you can only put in $13,500. That catch-up amount is only $3,000. Beats me why the government said if you're a smaller company with a smaller plan like this, you can't put in as much. But that's the rules. Know the rules and understand that you can get to that maximum amount, $13,500 for this year, 2020, plus another $3,000 in that catch-up contribution.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You said that's for both traditional and Roth IRAs?
Well, that's inside of these work plans. So that's a great point. A lot of people
inside of the work plan. Got it.
Yeah, a lot of people call their 401ks just my 401k, and they don't understand that there's something called a traditional 401k or a Roth 401k. Some plans now are allowing you to put in money that's after tax dollars. Means you don't get the tax break this year, but later on you get it tax free. You can put that money in as a Roth 401k and start building up some tax free money towards the future. And a lot of people say, well, if I do that, I'm limited to $6,000 because $6,000 right now is the Roth IRA limit. No, it's a 401k. Just because you're using the Roth 401k doesn't change a thing. You can still put in $19,500 plus the additional $6,500 as a catch up. And then they'll say, well, if I do the Roth 401k, can't do my Roth IRA. No, that's not the case, right? The traditional and Roth are completely separate. You can do your 401k and max things out. You can do IRAs and max things out. And when it comes to a traditional or Roth IRA, the maximum is $6,000 per person. And then you get an additional $1,000. Again, you get that catch-up contribution as well.
Okay. So if you've got these through the workplace, are you able to get a traditional or Roth IRA outside as well, or are you only allowed to have the one?
Yeah, you can do both. And we run into that confusion all the time. That's our hope today, is to kind of knock down some of those myths or thoughts that people have.
All right.
And that you can have your 401k and you can have an IRA. Completely different situations. You got these 401ks with a limit. You got the IRAs with a limit. You can do traditional or Roth inside of your 401k, and that does not prevent you from doing a traditional or Roth IRA. So we see people that can max out their 401k in the Roth with 26 grand. They can max out their Roth IRA with 7 grand. And a lot of people don't quite understand that because they don't realize that this is two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
So worth digging into. If you're someone that's got the ability and is very motivated to save for your retirement, don't let your misconceptions prevent you from saving the way that you want to save.
All right. I'm going to push the envelope further. Can you have,
let's do it.
Let's say you've got a 401k through work and whatever's in there, whether it's however the 401k is set up, can you on the outside of that have set up a Roth IRA, and can you then also set up a traditional IRA? Because if each one has their own separate limits, are you able to kind of mix and match like that?
A bit. So that whole 401k has a max of 26,000 or $19,500 if you're below 50.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter whether you do traditional or Roth inside the 401k. Your max is at 19,500 or the 26 if you're a little bit older there.
All right.
And the same thing on the IRA. You can do a little bit traditional. You can do a little bit Roth. You get to choose what you want to do, but the total that goes into the IRA is either the 6,000 or the 7,000. So it's kind of like you got your 401k levels and your IRA levels, and the government doesn't care really if you do traditional or Roth inside of each of those. They just say, hey, your max for this year, your IRA is the 6,000 or 7,000. So it's not per account. Sometimes people say, well, if I open an account at the other place and open an account with you, can I do 6,000 times 2? No, that's not the rule. Well, if I open a traditional with you and a Roth with you, can I do the 6,000 times 2? No, that's not the rule either. It's 6,000 total into the IRA. You get the choices of how much of that is traditional, how much of that is Roth. You can go all one or the other. You can do a mixture of both. And again, you got to figure this one out of what's going to help you best on the taxes now, as well as the taxes later on.
So what it boils down to me, and what I'm hearing from you, is an IRA is an IRA, and you're allowed to have one, whether it's traditional or Roth. You still have the same limit, but it's IRA is the basics of it. It just depends on which kind it is.
Yeah, the IRA, the most you can put into IRAs for 1 year is $6,000.
Got it.
Or the $7,000. You could have multiple. It's just you add them all up. You can't go over that limit.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Good. So let's move on to a few other confusions we see all the time. And a lot of them is related to some things like these ages. When can you take money out of your IRA or your 401k? What do you think there, Eric?
Let's see, isn't it 62 without penalties?
Yeah, so 62, that's exactly, there's so many ages, right? 62 is when you can first take Social Security. 65 is when you get to Medicare age. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would say 59 and a half because they understand and know that the 59 and a half is when you can take money out of these IRAs without any penalties. That's when you can take money out of your 401k without any penalties. But there's a special exception for these 401ks. Kind of the government realizes this is your work retirement plan. And sometimes people retire before 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. So they figure if you retired after 55, that place you retired from, you can take money out of that 401k after 55. So you might be 56 years old, retire, and you're allowed to take money from that 401k without the penalty. You can't go get your old 401k from 10 years ago and take it out without penalty. You can't go get your IRA and take it out without penalty. But if you basically retire from the place you're working, you do it when you're 55 or older, you can take money out from there without the penalty. And that's a big difference. Key thing to know, a lot of people do want to retire after 55, but they're not quite 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they say, I can't take $1 out. They feel like they can't take any money out, and they're incorrect. They might be missing out on some abilities to take money out. Sometimes they keep on working because they think, I got to wait till 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. When it's your 401k at the place you're working, you leave that place 55 or later, you can take it out without the penalty. Still got to pay taxes if there's any taxes there.
Yeah.
But then be careful, because a lot of times you talk to an advisor, they say, oh, let me do this rollover. I'll help you move your money from your 401k over to your IRA. You just made your number 59 and a half. So when you're 57, your money's in the 401k, you just retired. You can take money out of there without a penalty. You meet an advisor who either doesn't know or doesn't tell you that the IRA is 59 and a half. You just kind of put yourself in a position where penalties might show up again. And you were previously in a position where there weren't any penalties because you retired after the age of 55. You could have taken out that money from your 401k at 55. And got to be careful about this and know these numbers, because there's so many different numbers that each one different applies to.
Well, I feel kind of silly, I'll be honest, because my dad retired at 55 from Boeing. And that's exactly what he did. And I totally forgot about that he was able to take out of his 401k without any type of penalties. And that's how he retired early. Mm-hmm. He was in the Air Force for 20 years. So he also had Air Force retirement. And again, that's another way he was able to retire at 55 because he had another source of income there. But they both retired. My parents retired at 55, and that was a blessing, for sure for him, and he's 80, he's still alive, but he was able to stop working at a much earlier age than most, and I didn't even think about that. So that's great. Your own 401k, no penalties after 55. I got to remember that. I got to work toward that right now.
Yep. And it's the place where you're working. So if you leave that place after 55, so you quit working that job at 54, you're still 59 and a half for that rule. You got to leave that employer at 55 or later, which usually is what you're talking about. You retire and you're past 55, you can take it from that place you retired from.
So let me ask you this, Jeremy. Let's say somebody's been working for a company for, 30 years. They started when they're 20, now they're 50 years old. Whether they get laid off, whether they decide to move on, they have another opportunity, but that's where they have a 30 years worth of their 401k. And they go to work for another company, and they work for them for 5 years and tremendous salary. It's great and all that, but they're ready at 55 to retire. If they retire at that point, if their original 401k is still just there, just sitting there, can they draw off of that original 401k, without penalty? Or is it based on that new company that they were at for 5 years?
Yeah. So now you're showing just how complex this is and why it's so important to work with an advisor. And also so important to work with an advisor that doesn't make an investment commission from their advice or what they call advice, because that advisor could easily figure out that your first plan that you're talking about there, when you're about 50-ish and you leave, you could most likely roll that into your new plan, right? Your new place where you're working, your new retirement plan. And then when you retire at 55, it's not sitting in the old plan where you had to wait till 59 and a half. It's sitting in the new plan where you could take it out at 55. So there's some complexities there. And it's just so incredibly important to understand the differences between the 401ks, the IRAs, kind of your old 401k, your new 401k. And let's just talk about this. Let's talk about a few reasons why you may want to have a 401k and still use that place, or other reasons why you might want to take it out of the 401k, move more towards something that's called that IRA.
Okay.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. In your 401k, and here's some reasons why people might say you should take it out of the 401k. Go find something different. In your 401k, you're limited to the choices that the company came up with for you. You go to an IRA, you can call up just about any place you want, find just about any investment that you want. So sometimes you find these 401ks with a little bit of a restriction on the type of investments that they have, and you might want to get something different. That would encourage you to move out to an IRA. Another time too is these 401ks are really designed to help you grow and build your wealth. They're not so much designed to help you take the money out and live on it. A lot of times these 401ks, again, the companies can come up with these rules, but a lot of times the rule is that once you take $1 out, you got to take the whole thing out. Like, we'll help you build it up, but if you want any money out, you got to move it out to someplace else. So sometimes you're kind of being forced to take the money out. If you want to start taking it out on a monthly basis, the 401k might say, no, we won't allow you to take it out monthly. You're only allowed to take it out once per year or once ever. So if you want your money out, you'll have to move it from a 401k to an IRA.
Yeah.
And the way they figured that out, something called a summary plan description. Look into your website for your 401k, ask your HR folks, ask for that summary plan description. That'll give you the rules on how can you take this money out and what are the rules around that.
Gotcha. Jeremy, you said earlier, you mentioned moving, your 401k out and making it into something else, rolling it over, and advisors may advise you to do that without you trying to take money out. The company may not, or the 401k plan might not let you take it out without rolling it over someplace. Can you give me the pros and cons of doing that? I'm assuming it's a minefield.
Yeah, it's so specific. You need to get that summary plan description, which talks about your investment choices and what these different rules are. And we just said a few reasons why you might want to move money out of the 401k. Let's talk about a couple reasons why you might want to keep money in the 401k. So your 401k is a work plan when the investment folks are pricing it and saying, well, what do we charge these people? Well, generally, the more money you have, the lower the fees are. And if you work, especially at a big place, you might not have your own 100,000 or 500,000 in there. They're looking at the million or 10 million or 100 million. I mean, there could be $1 billion in somebody's 401k because it's the whole entire plan of everybody out there.
The entire
They're
company.
Pricing it. Yeah, you get the entire company. You get much better pricing power. So it could be that the investments inside your 401k are cheaper than getting the exact same investments outside of the 401k. So you want to keep that in mind. Keep that in consideration. Also, too, well, you said those ages. If you have the money in the 401k, you retire at 55 or later, you don't have to wait all the way to 59 and a half to take out those funds. So that might be a reason to keep money in the 401k, at least for those first few years till you're past that number of 59 and a half. And another one, little known one out there, is something called a stable value fund. You hit retirement, a lot of times you're looking for stability, and a 401k is allowed to have this type of fund called a stable value fund. And it's kind of like a money market, but just revved up as far as the interest goes. It's just really interesting the way it works out. But what's most important about this is that stable value fund is allowed inside of 401ks. It is not allowed outside of 401ks. So if you're looking for a stable interest rate, check out what that interest rate is. It might be a better interest rate inside the 401k then you could get somewhere else. So something you need to look at and make this decision on, like you said, the pros and cons. There's reasons you might want to move it to the IRA, but you want to remember there's some reasons you might keep it inside the 401k. Look at those investment expenses. Remember that age 55 and check out that stable value fund. See what interest rate that's paying.
All right. Stable value fund. I've never heard of that before. So that's great info.
Yeah, new one for you. And sometimes they call it something different. So we work a lot with We Energies employees. We're out here in Wisconsin, a lot of We Energies folks, and they have something called the Blended Rate Interest Fund. They just came up with that name years ago, but it's a stable value fund. So sometimes you have it inside of there. It's just called something different. So you got to check that out and find out what's the fund that is not going to be losing money, that's more of an interest rate area, and check out that interest rate compared to what you could get elsewhere. You might be better off keeping it in the 401k if you're going to be using that interest rate type of money.
Interesting.
Yeah. So last thing we really want to talk about here before we wrap it up is just this idea of there's a difference between what's called a registration. So these 401ks, Roth IRAs, simple plans, that's called a registration. Basically, what's the government looking at it? How is it going to be taxed? And that's different than the investment type. We hear all the time, what are Roth IRAs paying these days? Roth IRAs don't pay anything. Roth IRA is just what's showing up on your tax form. Yeah. It's the investment inside of it that matters as far as your returns go. Or he'll people say, this IRA is no good, but my 401k, that's making money. Okay, well, it's not the IRA itself that's no good. It's the investments that you're unhappy with. And just a quick story about that. We had somebody come to us a few years ago and say, well, my IRA, that went up a few thousand, but my 401k, that went up like 20,000. Well, you looked into it. Yeah, you put 20 grand into it. Your 401k, you're adding to it. It's not like the investments did anything. You're adding money to the 401k. So sometimes you think your 401k is doing great and some other accounts aren't doing as well. Okay, well, check out the investments, but also keep in mind your 401k you're adding to. The other investments you might not have been.
It's consistently going up.
Yeah, right. That's what happens when you put extra money in. Yeah. But that's just the confusion we see all the time of people kind of associate whatever's happening inside of their account with the big word of Roth IRA or 401k. It's the investments themselves, and you get to choose those investments. It's those investments that are going up and down. It has nothing to do with the tax piece of it, and the tax piece of it is what shows up on that government form, those 1099s that you get. That's the Roth IRA. That's the registration. That's the 401k. That's determined. It's completely kind of separate on there.
All right, Jeremy, I'm putting you on the spot here. We're running out of time. Can you give us a wrap up of the biggest points the biggest takeaways from today?
Yeah, absolutely. We want you, I got 3 of them. We want you to understand that the traditional or Roth 401k and traditional or Roth IRA are completely separate. You may be able to do both. And just because you have a Roth in your 401k doesn't mean you can't do a Roth outside a Roth IRA. They have completely separate rules, completely separate limits. And a lot of people feel that because they have one, they can't have the other. And we want you to stop thinking that. Today's the day. You're done thinking that your 401k rules are separate than your IRA rules. And you get to do that traditional Roth inside of either one, just depending on how you want to set that up.
All right.
Second one is what we just talked about. That registration, how the government's going to view it is completely different than the investment. If you're not happy with your Roth IRA or your 401k, don't blame the Roth or the 401k. Blame the investments and go take a look and see what you can change inside of there. And the last one is just to remember these different numbers, these different ages. It's not just a blanket 59.5 for everything. Could be 55 if you're leaving your employment when you're 55 or later. Your 401k could be available to you without a penalty at 55. And those numbers, those big differences in what you're allowed to do before and after a certain date are why you really want to be working with a financial advisor. Even more importantly, working with a financial advisor that's a fiduciary, that's not making an investment commission based on what they call advice. And a lot of times, if you're trying to get some good information, find that thing called a summary plan description.
Yeah. Absolutely. Summary plan description. That's again, that's something new for me.
Yeah, new phrase for most people.
Yeah.
But that's going to tell you a lot of stuff on what's inside of your plan, and especially what are the rules for when you want to take money out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, Jeremy, I want to say a final word to the audience as well. We covered a lot today. And one of the things that really stuck out with me is the ages, right? One of the things you covered earlier was ages. We talked about 50, 55, 59 and a half, 62, 65, 70 and a half. I think with the new Secure Act, which we've spoken a bit about, there's another age in there like 72. I could be wrong on that, somewhere in there. But anybody listening to this, if you are coming up to any of those milestones anytime soon, you've got to reach out to a professional. There are so many things that you need to do or you could do in those specific years based on government rules that you've really got to get a handle on it so you can make that good plan. Obviously, I know Jeremy very well, and I work with him obviously on this podcast. So I will say this is one guy you should be calling, you should be reaching out to. But if you have a professional, reach out to them. If they're not giving you the greatest answers, then reach out to Jeremy. Jeremy, I'm going to ask you to give your phone number again, because I think it's that important. People need to be reaching out to know what's going on at these ages.
Yeah, you can check us out online at keilfp.com. That's Keil FP for Keil Financial Partners, Keil. But otherwise, give us a call if you're wanting to at 262-333-8353.
Jeremy, thank you so much. I learned a ton on this podcast. I love it. Thank you for answering all my questions. And I'm hoping that the listeners will email in questions to you or make that phone call and make an appointment to ask you some more questions. Thanks again for your time, brother.
Thank you. We'll be talking soon.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast with Jeremy Keil. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Keil Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. Click on the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit retirement-revealed.com to learn more. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Keil Financial Partners. Keil Financial Partners does not provide legal, accounting, or tax advice. Consult your attorney or tax professional. Representatives have general knowledge of the Social Security tenets. For complete details on your situation, contact the Social Security Administration. Keil Financial Partners is a part of the Thrivent Advisor Network, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.